Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. Before we jump into this episode of the podcast, we just wanted to give a huge shout out to our newest Patreon supporter. I think you pronounce your name Thiemo or Tiemo. I'm really sorry if we're butchering that on our end, but we thank you so much for your support. And if you're interested in supporting the show, you get some awesome rewards such as copies of our ebooks, postcards from awesome locations around the world, and one-on-one hangouts with Ryan and myself. You can go to www.patreon.com/theworldwanders. And we thank you so much for your support. So on to today's episode, we've got a really fun interview with Jake and Michelle Schomp, who we met in Bali, Indonesia. They'd been listeners to the podcast for a while, and they reached out to us over Instagram to hang out with them and their two amazing toddlers, Henley and Jagger. And they run an Instagram account and a YouTube channel called Retired Toddlers. So you can see what they're up to through that. It's really cool to see travel through the eyes of their little ones. So Henley and Jagger just turned 2 and 4, and they've been to so many different countries with so many different cultures. And Jake and Michelle are here on the podcast today to share a little bit about the decision to travel with toddlers, what that was like, with their friends and family, and the support they receive back home, what it's actually like to be on the road with children, what they've learned through their travels, and so much more. So without further ado, here's the interview. We are super excited to be joined on the podcast today with Michelle and Jake, who are the parents of retired toddlers, Henley and Jagger, and they are joining us from Cambodia. But we had the pleasure of meeting them in Bali, and it was super cool to meet a family who was traveling with small children, and they're here to talk a little bit more about what it's like to, I guess, make the transition from traveling just as a couple to traveling with toddlers. So welcome to the show, Jake and Michelle.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Excited to be here.
And so I think a good place to start is if we rewind a little bit. So before Henley, you guys were avid travelers before you had children. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we each had a little bit of a travel bug, and then when we both combined together, it just kind of blew up.
Even before Henley, we and Henley's our first daughter, for those of you that don't know, but we're our first baby. And for that, we decided we were going to sell everything and travel the world and quit our jobs. So we kind of did this before, thinking when we have kids, there's no way we're going to be able to do this again.
Yeah, we were on that corporate track, and everything was going pretty well, but just decided to see a little bit more of the world before we kept going.
Yeah, I think that the idea that you have to get all your travels out of your system before you have kids, because you're going to have this essentially an 18 to 22-year-old gap where you can't really do any extensive travel, is a pretty common way of thinking.
Yeah, it definitely is among our social circles and amongst all the people we hang out with. It seems like it's become just the norm that you just settle in, you nest, and stay at home for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we assumed we would kind of do. And we knew we would always keep traveling a bit, but not that extensively. We would take more vacation style travels. And that's what we did after we had Henley. Jake was going back and forth to New York for some consulting jobs, and Henley and I would just pick up and travel with him when we could, but nothing out of the country until just this year.
Yeah, and so where did the idea start to come from that, maybe we should go for a long trip as a family?
More than anything, it started with my mom. I had a conversation with my mom about when I would spend more time with the kids rather than traveling so much for work, because traveling a lot every week for work, you miss out on a lot of those little moments with the kids. So I was talking to my mom about it, and she said, it's great that, you want to retire young, but you're really going to miss out on these very early years when the kids are, less than 4 years old. That's when the kids really need you the most. They need your guidance. They need you around. And that really stuck with me, and it really inspired me to take time off from my heavy-duty consulting.
Yeah, and they want you around.
Yeah.
They're not sick of you yet.
Yeah, I guess it's not even like they've formulated like cool versus not cool in their heads. It's like you're just what they know, and of course they want you around.
Exactly it. Yeah, exactly.
And then so once I decided I would take them time off from full-time working, it was just a natural next step that we would spend some time traveling. We felt like we weren't really locked into any specific place, and we felt like we had a lot of liberties to take off with the kids.
That's awesome. I still so inspired by that.
Yeah, it's funny I remember when we were talking to you guys in person, we've gotten some weird reactions from people like, oh, wow, you guys are really like off track. Just because, we're in our 20s and we're traveling a lot and not really buckled down and buying houses. But I feel like the reaction when you've got small kids and you're going to take them to developing countries is like a next level of like, wow, what are you guys doing? This isn't in the rule book. Have you guys gotten many reactions like that?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I think like people's underlying reaction is that, but to us, they're like, oh, that sounds really cool. We could never do it. Is usually what we get. Like, oh, you guys are so lucky. We could never do that. Really make sense to us because we're like, yes, you could.
Yeah, and I think the people that know us, maybe it's not that much of a surprise to them that we were taking off. I think that this isn't for everyone. Not everyone wants to take off and travel the world with their kids. So each their own. And to us, it just felt like a good fit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, is like not everyone does want to do that because it's a lot more like packing and thinking and planning than if you're just like two young people like traveling on your own.
Yeah, and the grass is always greener a little bit on the other side. So even though some people might see us traveling and think there's some great aspects of that, we also think that settling down and buying a house and being in a really good neighborhood, having your kids have a really good friend support system, all those things are really special too. So just kind of a little bit of whatever perspective you might have on it.
Yeah, there's always a part of life where it seems like the thing you currently have isn't as great as it was before you had it. So when you're at home and you're living in the suburbs and you're thinking, oh, wow, it's going to be so amazing when I'm traveling. And then once you are traveling, you kind of miss some of those things about being stationary.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I think that goes into the grass is always greener. And, we battle with that a lot with kids. I mean, now we're worried about not just ourselves, but also like these two developing kids. Are we doing the right thing for them? Or should we have them in a neighborhood where they can make some friends and have a more so-called stable life? Whatever that might be. But should we have them in schools, but really they're only 3 and 1, but there's like that pressure that you kind of feel or you kind of put on yourself and society kind of puts on you that you battle with. I mean, we kind of let that go, honestly, but it's still in the back of our minds, I would say.
Yeah, I think I see the beauty of both sides of it, but I definitely haven't felt that regret or that need to settle down anytime soon. I've really enjoyed every minute that I've spent with the kids on this trip. I feel like we've had so much quality time together. It's just been priceless for me.
Yeah, something that meeting Henley and Jagger and spending time with them that struck us was, and I mean, we don't spend a lot of time around small children, but we were talking like when we left your place, like we're like, are all like almost 4-year-olds like as comfortable like hanging out with adults and like talking to them as Henley is? Because I feel like my experience around small children is they usually like to hang out with other small children, and I wonder if that's because they're put in those situations, whereas like Henley and Jagger have had all these experiences with various different people that makes them a little bit more open to like, oh cool, you're in my house, we're having dinner together, yeah, I'll talk with you.
Yeah, Henley is just, and Jagger too, there's both really social. I don't know if that comes from us traveling a lot or if that's just their personalities. It's kind of hard to say. We definitely put them in a lot of different social situations and environments where they're meeting all different types of people. And I think because Jake and I get excited about meeting new people and hearing other stories, and just meeting up with friends, they do too. They kind of feed off that excitement. So if they hear we're having friends over or we're having people over and we get to go meet somebody for lunch like we did with you guys, they get really excited about that too. So I don't know if that's something unique to them or if it's
Yeah, and because they're not in school right now, they are hanging a lot. They are spending a lot more time around adults and older people, so maybe it is part of their normal. Also, though, I did have to prep Henley and Jagger. I said, guys, we're going to be meeting our biggest, these guys that we really admire, these podcasters. Try not to act like super fans, okay? Try to pretend like you've been there before, guys.
They had to go put away their World Wanderers onesies and tuck those back in the bag.
It's a good product idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So you mentioned it a little bit earlier that this point in their lives was a time you really wanted to focus on having quality time together. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on that, because I think a lot of people go and think to themselves, okay, my kids are really young. There's no point in traveling because like these probably not going to remember it anyways. Could you maybe talk a little bit about why it was important for you at this time to have so much quality time with them?
Definitely. I think that when you have these young kids and they start to go through stages, like all of a sudden they're not crawling anymore. Now they're walking and they're starting to talk and they're going through all these development stages really rapidly. You start to realize that there's a time limit on how long they're going to be these young little babies. And so to me, I really wanted to take advantage of this time specifically. And I know that, they're not going to be at this phase of life ever again. So this is our one chance we have to spend all this quality time with them.
Yeah, and Jake and I talk a lot about this because you hear a lot, well, why would you take them this young? They're not going to remember anything. And it was actually one of my thoughts, and what I kind of said when we first threw around the idea of, well, let's just take a trip to Europe when Henley was younger. And we kind of said, why would we spend all that money? She's not going to remember anything. But what we found is that, one, they might not remember everything, but honestly, I don't remember everything I did yesterday. So I don't expect them to remember everything. Henley remembers an amazing amount of details, an amazing amount of stuff from things that we did a year ago that we haven't talked about since then. Will she remember them in 5 years or 10 years? I don't know. But I know that she grasps the feelings, the sights, the sounds, the fact that we're all together and kind of builds that foundation. So I think that's a huge reason to do it. The other reason, though, is kind of for Jake and myself. We could wait until we're of retirement age and start taking a trip. And we might have our health or we might not have our health. And the family might want to come with us at that point, or they might have their own friends and be doing their own thing and not want to come with us at that point. So this is such a great time because they want to be with us. We're all healthy. We're capable of doing all this stuff. And they're interested in everything. So they don't need any toys and to keep them entertained. And they're not bored with stuff. They're just excited to be anywhere, doing anything, playing with a stick or frolicking down a road.
Yeah, I love that. It's actually truly childhood wonder to the things that are new and exciting around you every day.
Right, it is. It's really fun to see it through their eyes. It's a whole different element of travel. It's something we kind of talked about when you guys were over, but it's, when we were traveling, just Jake and myself, it was a very different type of travel where, of course we didn't have to worry about all the kind of safety issues and stuff that we worry about a little bit more when you have kids, but also just seeing things, doing things that we might find a little boring anymore, but doing things with the kids is 10 times more exciting.
What type of stuff have you found specifically to that? Are there some activities that are more fun with kids than other activities?
The pool.
Yeah, but even just going for a walk around a town where, if it were Jake and myself, we would be really walking to check out a certain destination, or maybe walking around and kind of browsing the shops, but we'd be walking distance, whereas with the kids, it's just not possible. We just don't walk cities like we used to. And so we're taking a little stroll around a village and stopping to see a butterfly land on a flower and a caterpillar crawl through the dirt and saying hi to the little kid who's staring at our kids, and they go up to each other and have this like little cute face off because they don't know what else to do with each other.
Yeah, I'd second that sentiment. I mean, when Michelle and I used to travel by ourselves, we don't talk to nearly as many people as we talk to when we're with the kids. So many people come up to us and are so warm and friendly and smile to us. We never got all of that love and warmth, everywhere we went like we do with the kids. It really opens up the world having these kids. They're just the best little ambassadors to connect with all the people around us. And like Michelle said, when we walk down the street, we used to just walk with a mission. And now when we walk down the street, the kids stop and smile and wave to every single person that they walk past.
I love that.
It almost like it forces you to be more present. Maybe not forces, but it just like helps you to be more.
It really does. It makes you stop. And this happens in, I'm sure, all travel, but it just makes you stop for a minute and be like, the little things in life again. You just kind of keep remembering that, this is the good stuff. It's this little moments here and there.
Has it surprised you that dynamic of just having kids has led to a lot more interactions with other people, or is that something you kind of expected going in?
I did not expect it, and I think maybe it's specific to Southeast Asia where we've been traveling in the last couple months, but people are so warm and open and outgoingly communicative, and they approach us. They don't approach us. They approach the kids, and so I was not expecting that, and I think that it's been a really nice surprise for us. It's been a really warm dynamic to our trip.
Yeah, I mean, the people, especially in Southeast Asia, something that we were not expecting is how they would love to come up and touch the kids. And it's one of those things where we've asked the kids to just be warm and welcoming too. Sometimes it's a little bit much, and we have to kind of try to find this balance where we want the kids to be open-minded and let people come up and explore them, and they can explore others. But then also sometimes the kids get picked up like 50 times in a row, and their cheeks get pinched. I mean, like, you have never seen anything like this. And 5,000 cameras are in their faces because everybody wants a picture of them. And the people will come up and try to get selfies with them while we're just like walking around. It's really hysterical. I've tried to recently try to take some pictures of it happening because I don't think anybody would quite understand. But
yeah, it's definitely not something that we're used to from being in America, where there's kind of like an unwritten rule. There's like a 3-foot rule where you don't get too close to my kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
Strangers.
Right.
Here,
yeah.
people just come right up, grab the kids, squeeze them, squeeze their cheeks, take pictures. There's no rules.
No rules. Yeah.
It's funny that you guys say that because we were at a restaurant in Ubud the other day, and it kind of experienced like that happening to another set of parents with their small child. It was a child who was like right in the process of being like learning to walk, but kind of at that like tipping over phase where they like tip over, try to get back up. They stumble a little bit, fall down, and all the waitresses at this restaurant were like obsessed with this kid, like picking it up and hugging it and laughing with her. I think it was a little baby girl, but we were just watching it happen. Like, they kept passing off this baby girl, and they were like cooing over her, and like, I don't know, it was just like funny. We're like, whose kid is
Yeah,
this?
because like, it wasn't obvious where the parents were. The wait staff was just parenting.
Yeah, the parents probably said, "Oh, here's some free babysitting. Well, we're going to take off for a while."
I think eventually we saw like a mom come in from outside, and she was kind of like, "Okay, like, I'll take my kid back now. We got to get going." But I know I've been watching some of the retired toddlers videos, and I feel like you kind of get like a feel for that in a lot of the videos where it's like they're having like this moment, or you see like all these people surrounding them, or even in your latest video, it looked like the crew of people. When you guys went to see the orangutans, was like picking up the kids and like running with them and stuff.
Yes, it really, it's just, I don't think I expected, I knew like some of that because the kids are kids and they get attention for being cute. But then in Southeast Asia, they kind of stand out a lot more to, little light-skinned kids running around. And I mean, we went to a school today to volunteer, and I would say there's cheeks got pinched probably 500 times each. And that is not like an exaggerated number at all.
If they do not have bruised cheeks tomorrow, I'll be surprised.
They need to get like cheek implants or something. Some like sort of like silicone thing that just covers it for protective purposes.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it was actually quite a battle. It's like, we teach our kids this, like that we want to be careful with strangers, but especially we want to be careful with tricky people is what I've always kind of taught them. And here it's so hard to explain. Henley will always ask, are they nice people? Are they tricky people? Are they mean people? She's always trying to get a feel for it. And it's been a little bit harder, Jake, I don't know if you feel this way, but kind of harder to explain to her. We're not sure some of the time, but mommy and daddy are here and we're looking after you. It's okay.
Yeah, I think coming into this trip, when you go into an international trip with little kids like this, we think, how are we going to protect these kids from everyone else? We really had to let that sentiment go a little bit and feel instead more like, how do we protect these kids from ourselves? And instead just let them explore this world that they're experiencing every day.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. We interviewed a person named Isaac Morehouse about just over a year ago on the podcast, and he and his family, his 3 children, had gone down to Ecuador. And he had a similar experience where one of his kids was just like, roaming, like made friends with all the kids in town and would like leave the house and just like go explore by herself.
Yeah, given she's older as well. She's like 9.
But it's a similar experience where he's just like, I just have to be calm and let her go do her thing and learn how to just kind of trust that things are going to be all right.
Yeah, like he's like, how do I balance like making sure that she's okay with like letting her have the freedom to like make this little like pack of friends in Ecuador.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, that's what it is. Like you bring your kids on these trips like this for them to have these experiences and connect with other people around the world. And you have to be willing to let your guard down a little bit in order to make that happen.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point to talk about. How do you find, I think, when most people hear your family with young kids, you're going traveling, the first thought is, oh, isn't that dangerous? There's Zika, there's all these other million things to be afraid of when you go traveling. How do you find a balance between making sure everybody's safe, but also getting out of your comfort zone and exploring new things?
Sure. So we definitely have a plan all the time. We play it a lot more on the safe side of the line than we may have done just on our own. So it's a different type of travel for us, for sure. It's a safer travel. It's a more planned out travel. But at the same time, we can't control everything. And Michelle and I talk about it a lot, how bad things can happen anywhere. Bad things can happen in your hometown if you're settled in and living your normal neighborhood life, or they can happen on the other side of the world. So we're certainly taking some risks that other people may not be, but we find that those risks are calculated risks. And certainly we would never do anything to endanger our kids in any way.
Has it changed? So you've been traveling on this trip since December and in Southeast Asia now. I think, when did you guys get from New Zealand to Southeast Asia?
We arrived in Southeast Asia in mid-February.
Has much changed as the trip's gone on? Have you kind of found that you've become a little bit more relaxed as you've gotten a bit used to it, or how has it developed?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started planning the trip back in, it was actually just November, so just 2 months before we left. And Jake and I we were on vacation in Hawaii, and we basically said, all right, let's just keep traveling. We sold our house. Our stuff, is already sold, or the little stuff we have left is in storage. And it was a massive undertaking. But one of the things that would keep me up at night is I would start to look into vaccinations, and then I would come across the malaria prone zones and where we were going, that's malaria prone, and that would keep me up for 3 nights in a row. So it's not that I have no fears or that nothing keeps me up like a normal mother wouldn't be worried about certain things, or this is the life we live in. Terrorism is a huge fear as well, but again, like Jake said, it can happen anywhere. And with things like malaria, you just you take some calculated risks and you kind of have a plan. And then once you're there, I don't know if you guys found this, but once we started traveling, it's like so many of those worries just disappeared.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? Why did we get ourselves all hyped up on so much stuff? Now, we always kind of have a guard up, but I think you should to some degree, just to make sure that you're safe. You don't have as many people watching your back. But yeah, no, I mean, I feel pretty relaxed as far as all of our fears that we originally kind of had.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Zika was such a big thing before we left, and we looked up, because Singapore was our first stop in Asia, and we looked up where are the high risk Zika areas. Okay, we're not booking an Airbnb or a hostel in this area. We're not even going to go visit there. And we kind of looked up Zika for our first maybe 2-3 stops, and it's been 5 months since then. And I couldn't even tell you if there's Zika in Ubud or not. I legitimately have no idea because people don't really talk about it over here. It seems like it's so blown up in the media back home, but then not really talked about over here.
Yeah, Amanda, I find the exact same thing. I feel like I knew exactly where all the malaria-prone areas were, and if I was going to step foot in it or not. And now I'm like, are we in a malaria-prone area? What are these mosquitoes dangerous? I have zero clue.
Yeah.
And every bug bite for the first 2 weeks of travel, I was like, do you think that bug bite looks bad? Do you think it's going to be okay? And now I'm just like, somebody has a bug bite. Do we have any coconut oil?
Yeah, we've definitely experienced the same thing.
Yeah, and a couple of stories on outbreaks. So one is Zika. Zika's a scary thing, but when we were living in Florida, we were really concerned in Florida because Zika started to appear in certain cases in southern Florida. So even at home in the States, we were afraid of outbreaks like that.
Right.
Then another one was we were actually right in the epicenter of swine flu when it broke out 7-8 years ago. And so you just never know when and where these things are going to happen, when they're going to break out. And even when you're right in the middle of an epidemic like that, there are ways to protect yourselves, and you have to just take those precautions or take that action when it happens.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of on that note, what are some of the pre-trip things that you had to do before traveling with toddlers that you guys didn't necessarily have to do when it was just the two of you?
We had to find a birth certificate for Jagger because I think we left ours in our storage unit somewhere in Florida. So we had to get him a passport because he didn't have a passport yet.
Right.
Yeah. It was, we really had about 2 months to plan before we actually were leaving, and that was over holidays. So I think it's just like any trip. It's can be so overwhelming at first. Where do I even start? Which country am I going to start in? Are we going to take a tour? Are we going to stay in hotels or Airbnbs? Are they home away or book a batch, or what are all these other sites out there? And so I just finally was I'm going to start somewhere. And one thing leads to the next. And as you start researching something, you have a question that you get answered somewhere else, and it leads to another question, and you just start. You just have to start, is what I found. And once I started researching things, I would figure out, okay, now I'm going to go to the CDC website and figure out if we need vaccinations. Now I'm going to just pull up all of our shot records and get them from the doctors, make sure we're covered. All right, I'm going to call our banks and make sure that, they know we're leaving. And then I started making a list of things I had to do, insurance. And then you think of health insurance with kids and travel insurance and all the stuff, the regular stuff. But then with kids, you just want to make sure you're double prepared and covered. And, if you would have asked me when I first started preparing, what do I need to prepare for a trip, I would have had no idea. But once you start going, I'm sure you guys found this too, that you start realizing what you need, and one question leads to the next, and all of a sudden you feel pretty prepared.
Yeah, and I mean, Google is at our fingertips now, which is so amazing. I feel like you can get information about almost anything on the internet, which is super, super helpful for stuff like that.
What is that site called?
google.com.
It's almost too much sometimes. I remember I was trying to look for good travel insurance for our family, and it's just this review and that review, and where do I even begin? I'm calling 100 places, and finally I just need to pick something and go with it and move on to my next task.
Yeah. with stuff like that, is a lot of it just like family insurance, or do you have to do separate insurance for the kids?
Oh, it's mainly family.
Yeah, and also Michelle and I have our own business, so it's a little bit different schematic. So we have to handle some corporate health plans, things like that, and make sure that they're going to work while we're traveling.
Right.
What's something that has kind of been like an unexpected challenge of traveling with kids?
Body training.
Be a good day.
I think a lot of the challenges we face are just challenges that we would face if we were at home in the States anyway. I mean, I think just raising toddlers and getting them through the different phases of life right now, getting them on the same page with us as a family, it just takes a lot of work every day.
Yeah, and it's no different if like you think, oh, we're sitting here drinking pina coladas and our kids are the most well-behaved things just running around us, fanning us down. It's not like that. That's a dream I have.
Mojitos.
They're having tantrums and they're having breakdowns. And one of the things we really try to do is to keep them on some type of a schedule. So again, that's a much different travel than when it was just Jake and myself and we can be out all day. Now we have to, we come back for a nap. So our day is really split into morning for a few hours and then evening for a couple hours before they go to bed. And we always try to get in a nap, a flexible schedule nap. If we need them to nap earlier so we can go out more in the afternoon, so be it. If, a day a week, they're not going to catch a nap or they have to catch it in a car or on a plane. It's not the end of the world. We're not super crazy about it, but that's been really important. And I think maybe some people would think that is a big challenge, but it's just part of how we're traveling. It's been actually kind of nice. It's a break for us too, that nap time.
Yeah, it becomes part of our routine. I think certainly has made it's a different type of traveling than when we were just on our own. But certainly it's not that bad. We get a nice excursion in the morning, then we come back for some nice downtime in the afternoon, and then enjoy some more family time before bedtime. So it's a good schedule. I think, like Michelle said, sticking to that schedule pretty strictly in some ways has been really helpful to give the kids some consistency. So no matter where we are, we have the same schedule every day, but also giving some flexibility in there so that if an excursion takes all day or what have you, we're able to, make the most of it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I've heard, like, obviously we don't have children, but I've heard that it's really key for especially young kids to kind of have that schedule. And it's cool that you've been able to do that while still being on the road. So I feel like if I were to guess like people's top concerns about taking kids on the road, I feel like that would be one of them. Like, how do you maintain this like day-to-day schedule, like, and not cause upheaval into their worlds while still being able to enjoy yourself?
Yeah, no, I mean, the main questions that we get are, what do you do about the time zone differences? And what we do is as soon as we hit a different time zone, they're on it. Like, we don't try to negotiate the day before, the day after. It's just they're on that time schedule. So if we arrive somewhere at 11 a.m. in the morning, they're going to have their nap whenever we get settled in. If we arrive somewhere at 4 p.m. in the afternoon that time, then we keep them up until maybe an early bedtime. And we kind of have some flexibility as far as that goes, but they just get right on the schedule wherever we're at. So that's, it's actually been easier than what I would have assumed. When I first had Henley, do you remember how crazy I was about her schedule? It was like she would go to bed at 1 o'clock and she would sleep, and then at 6:30 she has dinner and she's in bed by 7 or whatever it was.
I don't know what you're talking about. You were never crazy.
I wasn't the craziest of people I knew, but I definitely had her on a schedule. Like, what, you guys want to do something at 12? I can't make it, And here I'm like, okay, you want to do something at 12? Well, then I'll put the kids down for a nap at 2:30. So we have time to do that. Or what, you want us there at 2 p.m.? Like we went volunteering at like 2:30. And so we put the kids down for a nap at 11 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the kids definitely thrive off a schedule. I think they really excel because of the schedule. But we have some flexibility to it, and it makes for, again, it goes back to that consistency. Even though we might not be in the same place every week, we're sleeping in different beds and different places and experiencing different climates, all that. They know to expect the same daily routine more or less.
Yeah, and whenever we get somewhere, we also kind of introduce them to their bed. Henley, this is your big girl bed. Aren't you so excited? And Jagger, here's your, if we have a pack and play or crib, or if he's just going to sleep in a regular bed with a bunch of pillows around him.
Or just we put him on the floor, whatever.
We do have a little pop-up tent that fits in our suitcases. So when we need it to, if they don't have anything, we can just pop up that tent and throw them in there. But he has a little sleep sack that he's well grown out of. But that to him signals sleep, and it always has. And so we made that very consistent before we left for the trip. And that way he has that. So as soon as we get that out, he knows it's bedtime and kind of falls. So some like little things that kids have that might signal sleep. He has that and a certain rockabye I sing to him, and he's kind of comforted, and that's that. But I will say the car seat situation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, from all those parents out there know that with young kids, car seats are integral. It's critical for them to be in their car seats. And so traveling, that was definitely a concern for us. Car seats are really big to carry if you're flying and busing and doing all these things all around. So that was a concern for us for sure. And we've made the most of it everywhere we've been just by renting cars in New Zealand with car seats and setting them up ahead of time when we had tours.
Yeah, it's just another funny thing of like something I've let go that if you would have asked me even 6 months ago, would you ever do this? I would say, no, are you crazy? But I had Henley in a 5-point harness. I knew exactly where her chest clip should go, and nobody else was to buckle her in because I wanted to make sure she was safe, and I wanted to always drive her. And she was rear facing until she was like 3. And then I have Jagger in a tuk-tuk in Cambodia, and I'm holding on to him with like one hand. So.
When in Rome.
Do you know what's funny about that is I saw a family the other day just driving like down the main street in Ubud, and it was definitely like a white family, like clearly foreigners, not Balinese people. 4 people on the moped, small baby attached to like one of those front kind of like jumper things attached to the mom, and then the little kid like standing up with a helmet on, but standing up just like one of the local kids would be. And I was like, I wonder how long they've lived here for them to have like completely forgotten that they would never do that at home.
It's real acclimating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, I hate to say this about myself, but I would have judged them. Like I'd have probably been like, what crazy family would let their kid do that and put them in so much danger? And then you get to these places,
The moped, that's a bit extreme.
Yeah, the moped, actually, I don't think I could do the moped yet, but I said I want to do a tuk-tuk, and here I am. So, I don't know. You kind of realize, well, one, you realize that they're driving about 15 miles per hour. So we're not talking about highways here, but,
I think it's all relative, that like they say that the traffic here moves like water and everything just kind of flows together. It's very smooth and slow moving, and I think it's certainly there's some danger, but it's a controlled danger.
Right. Yeah, I think you like learn to kind of like trust the process, I guess. Like you're like, okay, everyone else seems to be doing it and it's working fine. Like maybe I'll just like let go of control a little bit and, try it out.
Right. And with that being said, I mean, well, I still haven't gotten on a moped because those do scare me. But when we take longer trips, we hire a driver and a van with car seats, even here in Cambodia. So, it's a little give and take of us letting go and also trying to keep our kids as safe as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that taking this trip as a family has impacted the way you parent and will parent even when you're back at home afterwards?
That's a good question. I think certainly spending all of our time together. I mean, we don't have the kids in daycare or preschool, anything like that here. So we're together 24/7 for the most part. We're caring for them around the clock, obviously. And so I think that we've probably learned to be able to handle an entire day much better than we were able to handle in the past. We maybe had more breaks built into our day previously. So now we just have a different approach to handling our entire day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know if we'll parent differently. I think we'll parent with our eyes a little bit more open, and that we know to let go. I mean, I think it goes back to letting go. I think I've let go of a bunch of things. It's like I'm very picky about what the kids eat, but sometimes I just can't get my hands on the best quality food that I would prefer to serve my kids. And so they eat what we can find. And so there's a lot of that stuff that I've just kind of let go because it's more about the experience at this point. And so back home, I hope that I could kind of continue that letting go a little bit process.
Yeah, and along those lines also, like we talked about earlier, I'd say I would like to be a little bit more willing to give the kids more flexibility, more freedom around strangers. I think that certainly, again, the safety is obviously the number one priority, but seeing how amazing it is for these kids to make all these connections with people that they're just passing on the random street, it really opens my eyes up to, how closed we are in America. We don't want to have random conversations with people that we walk by or pass by in a store. But you realize that we're really closing ourselves off to all those connections that we could have in life.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to think about. I wonder what it'll be like for like Henley and Jagger going back to the US, and they're getting used to having these like interactions with other kids and other adults. I wonder if that's something that's going to transfer for them too. Like all of a sudden they're walking down the street and they're saying hello and interacting with other people in a way that maybe they wouldn't have done if they hadn't traveled Asia.
It's interesting that you say that, and it's something I've kind of thought about. I've wondered if they'll just jump right back into stuff, or if it'll be a little bit harder for them to assimilate back to their world at home. But it's funny. We were sitting next to a couple the other day at breakfast and started chatting it up with them. And they were from the U.S. and they had sponsored some students here in Cambodia. And they were talking about how they traveled with their kids when they were really young, and how to ignore the whole school system. Don't feel pressure that you have to get your kids in school. That we're doing the right thing. They're just very encouraging, as most travelers that you meet along the road are, telling you you're doing the right thing, keep going. But one of the things that they said that really stuck to me is that not you leave, that's the hardest part. Not leaving everybody and going out to travel is not the hardest part. The hardest part is always coming home, because you have all these experiences that you're not really able to share and nobody understands and appreciates like you do. And I understood that for me, but when they said it's going to happen to your children and that's going to be the hardest part, I really started I haven't really let that sink in yet and what that will entail. So it'll be interesting, but I hadn't really thought about that. I just kind of assumed the kids are so young at this point. They've been traveling basically their entire lives. So what will that look like? But it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, they're going to come back to the States and they're going to say, why are we taking an Uber? Why can't we take a tuk-tuk?
Yeah.
I imagine they'd be like talking to other young kids as well, and the other kids would not be able to understand, like, oh, like this happened when we were in Cambodia, and the other kids would be like, what's Cambodia? Is that like Orlando, or where's that?
Right. I think that's exactly what this couple was basically saying, is that that's the kind of stuff when the kids are trying to explain to their peers that it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to assimilate back, and not that that's a bad thing. It's just that the kids are going to have all these big experiences that not many people are going to have and be able to share with them.
Yeah. Thinking about so I had like a pretty standard upbringing, like grew up in like 25 minutes away from where my parents had both been born and grew up. And so it's kind of just like what I knew. And I remember like a couple kids coming to the school and they'd be like, yeah, I'm like from here. Like we had one kid from South Africa come one time. And I just remember being so like, wait, you're from South Africa? Like, what? Like, why are you here? Yeah. Like, I don't, like, my brain, like, couldn't comprehend it because I had just grown up in this, like, small town in Alberta, and that's, like, what I knew. But I think it's really cool to have those experiences when you're really young. Like, you've seen so many other things and so many people doing different things at such a young age.
No, absolutely. I feel the same as my kind of upbringing. And I mean, I was exposed to a lot, but we didn't travel internationally when I was really young. And I remember some people in even my high school saying that they took a trip internationally, and it was just it would almost just fly over my head. Just like, what? Okay, whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing is fine. I went out last night to the club. Like, it was just such a it's weird to look back on and think about.
Yeah, just to see how your perspectives are different versus like what your children will have.
Yeah, like for me, it's kind of like that Matrix style comparison, like the first time I left the country, it's like your mind is just blown, like you feel like you really do just live inside this box. And as soon as you step onto foreign soil, all of a sudden you step outside that box and there's an entire world outside of your box. So it's really hard to comprehend.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for us, that was probably like backpacking Europe.
Yeah.
Which was like 21, 22 years old. And I traveled to like Mexico and the US, of course, and stuff. But I feel like it was like very kind of like still in a bubble type travel. And it's like going out on your own and seeing Europe is like, whoa, this is like a whole other world.
Right. I remember that too when I backpacked Europe out of college, and I was just like, wow. And again, I remember feeling like I wish some other people could share this with me that are back home, because when you travel together, the experience just is so much more powerful and meaningful. And then when you're by
she found me.
Jake.
Soulmates.
Problem solved. Have you guys been surprised by the amount of other families with young kids that you've met since you've been traveling?
Oh man, it's unreal how many traveling families there are. I had no idea that there was this whole culture of people that travel with kids. And granted, a lot of them are not from the U.S., so we weren't exposed to those other types of families. But so a lot of them are from other countries. A lot of them are from countries that really support taking time off or sabbaticals or different parental leave, extended parental leave. But it's been really encouraging and supportive to see this whole society of families that travel around the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think my first experience with seeing like a small child abroad was probably when we were in Laos, like almost 6 years ago. And we were doing like an elephant sanctuary. And there was this family that was, the father was Thai and the mother she was European, like Swiss or something like that. So this like beautiful, like half Thai, half European baby. And they just like 3 years old up on an elephant. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool. Like, I didn't even know that traveling with kids was like a possibility until that point in my life.
Yeah, I know. I just can't believe the number of families that are out there traveling. It definitely made us feel normal in some ways. In a lot of ways, when we first started out on this trip, we felt like, do other people really do this? Are we crazy for doing this? And seeing all these other people out there traveling, running into them randomly on the street as we travel, or seeing them on social media, it really gives some normalcy to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that that's like something that we've experienced. Is it's really nice to know that this idea that you have, or this thing that kind of like you feel like is the right direction, to have some sort of confirmation with that a little bit from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, going to college, or Jake and I talk about when expats move to a certain city and they all kind of find really good friends because they're all kind of doing the same thing and want the same type of experience out of it. And so that same type of thing has happened. Now, granted, we're not all in the same city or doing the exact same thing, but it's nice to feel like there is actually a big community of people that are like young traveling families, and then you have your world schooling families, those that are basically homeschooling on the road while they travel, and just these whole communities out there. I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of families that are doing this. So it really is encouraging.
Yeah, and what I really have appreciated from that is seeing from an outside perspective how much those kids are gaining from their travels. So I don't always have that perspective of what our kids are gaining with the experiences that we're going through, but I can see from those experiences that those other families are sharing with their kids how much they're really giving to their kids' development.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit more? What are the types of things you see in those kids who have been traveling for longer?
Yeah, for me, I'd say I'd see some of the kids that are in that, I don't know, let's call it 8 to 13-year-old range, where they're really starting to open their eyes to the things around them. And for them to go to cultures that are completely opposite of what they know and are comfortable with, whether it be a developing country or a completely different climate or different culture that lives by the water or whatever it might be, from some of these traveling families where they're venturing to, you really see that those kids are not only learning about the world that they are familiar with, but they are being exposed to this world that is way beyond anything that they would normally see in their hometown.
Yeah, I think that that's super interesting. I would love to see like the progression of children like that, like be able to watch them throughout their entire lives and just like see how they grow from those experiences, which I guess is what you do as a parent, essentially.
Yeah, no, but it is interesting. I mean, I've even kind of sat and watched Henley and Jagger just in the last couple of months and how Henley has traveled before. But Henley is obviously very outgoing, and she always has been, and will give a smile and a hi and kind of go up to anybody. Now, some places, I don't know, Jake, if you've watched this too, but I was explaining to the school today that I've noticed that Henley sometimes has become a little bit more shy. She wants to hold back a little bit until she kind of gets to know the kids. And then, of course, today she's running with them for like an hour nonstop, sweating from head to toe, running around with these kids and, making friends. But she's gotten a little bit nervous because she doesn't speak the language. So they'll be talking to her. And typically the kids will just kind of smile at each other, say hi and bye, play a little tag, and kind of do their thing. And that's what ended up happening. But a couple times she's mentioned to me, I don't know what they're talking to me about, Mommy. Can you help me? I don't know what they're saying to me. And almost a little bit frustrated. So it's been a little bit interesting to see as she's grown, she's almost becoming more aware and wants to understand and doesn't yet. I can't, but I mean, I can't help her either. I don't understand either. And whereas Jagger, he doesn't really have many language skills yet. So he just will literally go up to anybody and just start smiling at them. And if they touch his cheeks, well, he's going to grab theirs. And then if they touch him, he's going to run after them. And he'll give some high fives and say hi to everybody on the street. And
yeah, it is interesting to see her go through that because you're right. She doesn't speak the language. And it's kind of like if you were in a group of people and you felt like people were talking about you behind your back, but right in front of you. She feels that way times. Just in this recent month that we've been traveling through some of these countries, that there's not a lot of English spoken in some of these places, and it is frustrating for her. I can understand what she's experiencing, and she feels like maybe she's being left out or excluded. So she's just going through that and trying to learn what the best way it is to deal with that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too to think about that because she's at an age where, it wasn't so long ago that she didn't have those language skills to communicate. Like it's more like Jagger's doing, like body language and smiles. And now she's got those language skills. And so to have those language skills, you can communicate to people and that gets you things a little bit easier. Like children know that. And then to all of a sudden feel like that's kind of removed would be so frustrating.
Yeah. And we left Bali and she came to Cambodia and she tried to say thank you in Balinese when she got here. And obviously they have no idea what she's talking about because they don't speak Balinese here.
Oh, that's actually so cute.
She tries to pick up on something and then all of a sudden we move and take that away from her.
Yeah.
So I can see how that would be pretty frustrating for her.
Yeah, but today, did you hear her bust out a couple Cambodian words out of nowhere? And I was just like, what? All right. I mean, it's not many. It was 2, but
it's more than I speak.
She really is. She's trying, and it was really sweet and cute, and you can just see her little mind working, and she's always trying. She sometimes, I've noticed a lot lately in the last month that she's been trying to basically make up a language because she wants to speak whatever language, so she makes up these random words and sentences.
Oh, that's so cool.
That she kind of just, the language that she's speaking, and she just, she wants, or she asks us, can you teach me this language? So it's interesting. It's just interesting to watch.
Yeah, she's like trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. They're making weird sounds. Maybe I just need to make weird sounds back at them.
Exactly.
I kind of love that. I feel like that. I mean, I don't know much about like child development, but I feel like that's like kind of a window into the way like a toddler's brain works and how like as humans we learn communication.
And isn't it interesting too, because as you get older, you get more standoffish to people typically, right? You feel it's harder to make friends and And maybe part of that is a language barrier, and part of that is you feel like somebody is judging you. Whereas Jagger is just like, he doesn't care who's judging him or what people are saying. He's just going to play and have fun with you, and it doesn't matter. And Henley is, for the most part, she's like that. But at times, she's more like almost like an adult or a teenager goes through, where it's like, are they judging me? Do I fit in here?
Yeah, she's starting to become more self-aware, whereas Jagger is not self-aware at all.
But he's got the cutest little laugh.
He does.
So on that note,
It gets a buy.
oh yeah, he's so cute. I was gonna say on that note, people should go check out the Retired Toddlers YouTube channel, which we'll put a link to. But I'm curious, like when you guys decided to travel, what inspired you to create sort of this like use? I'm trying to think of how to word this best. Like, I guess create this like Instagram and YouTube channel through your children.
Yeah, I think it started out as being parents for a few years. We realized we end up with so many digital pictures stored on a laptop, or we back them up to the cloud or whatever, just so we preserve them always. But they're really hard to then digest or to consume in a way that really makes sense. So when we decided, hey, let's do this really big around the world trip, we said, let's at least spend the time to package it up in a way that is really consumable, that you can look back to the kids someday instead of having to dig through files here and there all over some old laptops, that it's all packaged up and they can experience this trip for themselves in 10, 20 years down the line. So we decided to really build this, I don't know if you call it a brand, but this package so that we could give that to the kids someday.
Yeah, that'll be so cool to go back and look at.
Yeah, I think, for a while there, we just had so many 30-second, 1-minute videos on a laptop. And I was just like, if we're going to take this trip, I am not going to have all of those. I'm going to pick our best, put them in a video. And then we decided to make it public because, one, we wanted to just show other families that you can travel with little kids. And we thought maybe it would be encouraging to some families that you can do this, or you can take a nice big vacation. It doesn't have to be a couple year thing, but that it's not much different. You're going to have the same highs and lows as you might at home. So there's not as much to fear.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because even as non-parents, it's something that we've talked about, kind of that, what we started this conversation with is this idea that, we should probably go to all the places that are really high on our list now before we have children and we're limited to not traveling anymore. And seeing this world of people traveling with young children is really inspiring because it's okay, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be like that.
Yeah, or it's maybe you should wait until you have kids to go to this place because it would be even better.
I love that mindset.
Yeah, it definitely, I don't know how you guys are, but with kids, we've definitely taken it a lot slower. We have this mindset where we are not going to try to see everything. Where we used to go to a place and be like, we have to see every single big church and every single big temple and every single big monument. Now we go and we're like, we are going to see this because we want to. It's a must see here, but then we're not going to try to see these other 5 things. We're going to just walk around the village one day. We're going to have an off day, and then we're going to go see something else, and then we're going to have an off day. And we just keep telling ourselves we can always come back, and we are not going to try to see everything. And we have to remind ourselves that over and over again. Otherwise, we'll just not be able to travel.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good pace to our trip, and I always like to say, you have to have a reason to come back to a place, so you can't see everything this time.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you guys travel-wise over the next few months?
Well, it's a good question because we booked until Cambodia, so we're pretty much wide open from here.
No, we finally will be in Cambodia through the end of the month, and then we just booked a flight to London. And we don't have much scheduled, but we plan to do UK, Scotland, Wales for a month.
Yeah, Michelle and I are kind of putting together our list of things that we definitely want to see. I've never been to England, so I want to spend some good time there. So we'll spend a month traveling around England, Scotland, Wales. I really want to make it to the Arctic Circle, so we're going to try to do that in Norway later this year.
Yeah, and maybe hit up Sweden, Denmark, and then we will probably make it back to the States for a month or two over the summer to do to New England.
Some family reunions,
Summer.
sort of stuff.
Which is actually, speaking of New England, which is where Retired Toddlers kind of came from, because we would spend the summers up in New England. And since we were living down in Florida, we would go up to New England for the summers when it got really hot in Florida. And then we would usually come back down to Florida after the holidays around January. And we would always be in line with all the retirees, the snowbirds.
I was
going to
say,
flocking up.
that is like snowbirds.
Yes. So people would always laugh and say that we were like we were retired, and our kids were like retired little kids. And so that's kind of where Retired Toddlers came from.
It's a good name until they like get their first jobs.
Exactly. Exactly.
You can do like retired toddlers through to retired teenagers. And then, and then it's like, okay,
Well, it's funny.
we can't support you guys anymore. You can't be retired anymore.
What did Henley say to us the other day? She said,
we can't, Daddy, we can't go retired toddlers anymore because I'm going to go back to work.
out of nowhere. We were like, really? What are you going to do? That's exciting for us.
Didn't she say, I think I saw that video. Didn't she say she was like making music or something?
I said, what are you going to do? She said, making music.
I feel like you're going to have so many of these like America's like funniest home video type things. Like all these like, you know, like things that like Henley have said, things that like Jagger will start to say, like captured on camera.
Yes, it is. We definitely have our cameras more ready. We don't capture everything, but we have gotten some pretty funny things. Henley's pretty funny in general if you just let her keep talking.
Yeah, I was really, really interested, like meeting her and talking with her. And something I have to remind myself constantly, because I don't interact with kids that much, is not to like talk in that sort of high pitched, like you're treating them like a baby or a cute puppy or something. And I was just like, Henley, where was your favorite place on this trip so far? And she's like, I really liked Hawaii. And it was just like I was talking to like a girlfriend who's like my age.
Yeah, it's funny. I always try to remind myself of that same thing when Henley was born, is that I don't need to talk to her like a baby. Like I'm just going to talk to her like a person. But we still have to remind ourselves of that sometimes. But she does. She talks like an adult. People say that all the time. It's funny.
She's like 3 going on 30.
Perfect. Nothing wrong with that.
Old soul.
And so just one last question for you guys. I'm curious if there's anyone listening who is like, yes, I would love to do this. I would love to travel with my family. Like, what is like one thing that you guys, or maybe 2 things that you guys have packed that have been like essential to having success traveling with kids?
I'd say for me, the coolest thing that I didn't know existed was that pop-up tent. And so that's definitely for very younger kids, like, you know, between 0 and 5 years old, probably. But this little tent that packs up very thin, and it actually fits in our stroller bag. And it's a completely self-contained tent, like you would find for an adult, but just totally mini-sized. It makes a really nice, warm place for the kids to sleep, a very cozy place for them to sleep.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten use out of that a few times, where it's, where are we going to put the kids? There's not really a great bed, especially for Jagger, who needs a little bit more support, and where Henley we can kind of put anywhere. But that pop-up thing, it's so, I mean, you literally just pop it out and it's ready to go. So we'll be arriving at midnight somewhere, pop that out, and Jagger crawls in and we can kind of lock him in there and be done.
Yeah, it's called a Kilo Fly, Kilo Fly tent. And if we were stuck at an airport or something, we could break that out and have them sleep in an airport. I mean, it's an awesome little contraption.
Oh, that's really cool. So it would allow them to like keep on their schedule, even if you had like a long travel day or something like that.
Yeah, that's been pretty good. What other things? I think our stroller's been good, but we haven't used it that much lately. And I think their shoes.
Yeah, shoes.
Am I in love with their shoes, or is that just me?
No, I'm in love with their shoes too.
Yeah, they have those. What are they? The Native Jeffersons. Is that what they're called?
Native Jeffersons.
Native Jefferson shoes. I think they're actually made in Canada. Is what I heard.
Yeah, we got called Canadian yesterday because somebody saw the shoes on. They're like, "Oh, those are made. You guys are Canadian, right? Because we saw those are made in Canada."
Really?
wow.
So I didn't verify that, but apparently they're. But yeah, they're they're so lightweight, and they're rubber, or what are they made
Yeah, they're some
of?
type of rubber or silicone, and they're just rough and tough shoes that are also very comfortable.
but they're like, they weigh less than like an ounce. I mean, they're so lightweight, and we put socks with them when we were in Vancouver in January, which probably, as far as style goes, is not an appropriate look.
I don't know. Please tell us, is it cool in BC?
But it works for that. And then we wear, they can wear them in any sort of water condition, on any, if they get constantly dirty on these dusty roads here in Cambodia, and we just throw them in the shower, they rinse off easily, and off we go. So I feel like those are a lifesaver. Those are basically the only shoes we've worn for the past 2 months.
Yeah, super versatile.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed their shoes when we were together. They kind of reminded me of like a cool kids version of Crocs a little bit.
Yes, exactly. That is kind of like the same thing.
Like with backs on them though. So like a full-on shoe as opposed to a sandal.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's been good. We don't pack many toys for them. Some reusable types of the aqua doodle kind of water pen toys, reusable sticker toys, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of like the biggest things that people kind of like, I don't know, like we were kind of talking about when we were in person, like people assume that you need to have all of these toys for kids because it's kind of just the way it is in our society. But kids are actually so fascinated by things that are not like store-bought toys.
And you go to any of these communities, especially in Southeast Asia, and not one kid has one toy.
Yeah, not that they don't have toys, but I've never seen them walking around with toys. Nobody's playing with toys. They're just...
Well, even when we went to those villages within their houses, they had 0 toys. They're playing with sticks and like a handmade kind of straw ball or something that they made.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting too, like being around the kids, and like we were like catching crickets, and we were like painting with a stick on the ground, and it's just like they were so fast, like they kept themselves entertained for like probably a good hour with no toys.
Right.
Yeah, definitely everywhere we go, there's a new quote unquote toy, something from the natural world around them, or something from our environment, something from the house we're staying at that's totally novel to them, and it doesn't have anything to do with the toy.
That's really cool. I love that. Amazing. So where can people go to find out more about what you guys do and to watch Retired Toddlers videos?
Yeah, you can check us out. We have retiredtoddlers.com, or you can check out our Instagram at Retired Toddlers, or YouTube channel at Retired Toddlers.
Facebook at Retired Toddlers. Everything Retired Toddlers across the board.
Cool. Yeah. And just for people listening, that's mostly featuring Henley and Jagger with the occasional appearances of Jake and Michelle.
Yeah, but if you really like listening to us, we actually are coming out with a podcast soon.
Yeah. What do you guys know what you're going to call it? Is it going to be Retired Toddlers as well? Parents of Retired Toddlers?
Just Retired Toddlers. And we just, more than anything, we found that it's been really nice for the two of us to sit down and recap the places we've been, and really, because a lot of times as parents, you're always around the kids and you don't get that one-on-one time to really talk about how each of these places in our travels have impacted us. So I found it's really refreshing and, fulfilling to just sit down and talk about the places we've been and how it made us feel and all that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can both definitely relate to as well. I mean,
absolutely.
That's why we started our podcast. So yeah, once that's out, you'll have to send us a link so that we can listen and share it along for other people to hear as well. I feel like there's definitely a need for like more conversations around families traveling. Yeah, and you guys were a big inspiration to us deciding to do podcasts. So kudos to you. What's funny though is that we were kind of tracking our travels a little bit delayed because we were still a little bit nervous that we made our profile public and we don't want people to find us with 2 little kids, and we weren't really sure how that whole thing was going to pan out. But once I started seeing that when people are posting real time, it gives really good opportunities to meet up with people. And we knew that you guys were in Bali, and then since then we've met up with some other people, some friends that I would have had no idea that they were traveling where we've been, and it's just been very random. So posting real time has its benefits, and now I'm back to posting real time.
Yeah, it totally changed our mindset. Being able to make these connections with people while we're in a place is really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think too it's interesting because like if you kind of like keep your your profile private. It's kind of going back to what we were talking about with like letting go of control of things. It's like it's easy to be like, well, am I exposing my children without like really giving them a choice, or am I like putting myself out there for somebody to maybe like have a negative impression of, or even for like a dangerous situation? But I feel like the positives of that like outweigh it so much. Like meeting really cool people who are like-minded, it like doesn't happen if you don't, I guess, kind of put yourself out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. It's the exact same thing that goes through my mind is, should we not? And then at the end of the day, I mean, I met up with a girl that I did yoga teacher training with years ago, and she happened to be in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and she happened to catch a glimpse of something I posted. And I mean, I would have had no idea and missed this amazing opportunity to connect with her again.
Yeah, and it was just one day that our paths crossed here, so perfect.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Awesome. I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, guys. It was awesome to chat with you. You guys are definitely like parenting goals, so you're super inspirational for us.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been awesome being on the show. We were, long-time listeners, first-time callers.
Just been waiting for someone to say that.
I think Jake's been wanting to say that for like a few days now.
Yeah, catch us next week on World Wanderers Live Call-In Hour.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. We appreciate you having us on.
Thank you.
Thank you. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.